Hello and welcome, my name is Disaster, this is Battlefield 1, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the medic skill cannons. Specifically, of course, I'm talking about the autoloading 835 and Zebslada 1906. Now we're going to be talking about why you should be using these weapons, and more interestingly really, how you can learn to use these weapons successfully if you're currently struggling to do so. We're going to go through a number of weapons with which you can essentially slowly build up your skills to the point where you can start using the autoloading 835 and Zebslada 1906 successfully on the battlefield. Now, too many people really do underestimate the power of these weapons and believe they are just extremely bad or underpowered. I've heard as silly of a suggestion as decreasing the bullets to kill of something like the Zebslada 1906 to 2 to make it a viable weapon. Just for the record, that would be a horrible idea. That would mean that the Zebslada 1906 could basically kill targets at the same speed as an Automatico can at any range on the map. Yes, 50 meters, 100 meters if you can hit your shot, you'd be downing people as quickly as an Automatico would. Generally, just not a great way of balancing weapons. For a matter of fact, these weapons are balanced extremely well. Not all weapons are, but these weapons are in the case of Battlefield 1, and really too many people overlook them because they're a little bit more tough, and simply too many people overlook these weapons because they're just too tough to use, especially when it comes to managing the small magazine size. And it really does show in the statistics as well. If you look at how many kills amongst the SLRs are made by what weapon, you'll find that if you add up the totals of the 835 factory, the 835 Marksman, and the Zebslada 1906 Factory and Zebslada 1906 Sniper, you're going to come to a grand total of 6.1% of all SLR kills. That's not of all primary weapon kills in Battlefield 1, that's just of the self-loading rifle kills in Battlefield 1. Now you may think, well, 6.1%, that's not too bad. Well, compare this to something like the M1907, which just in its 3 variants available accounts for 19% of all SLR kills. Amongst other top-ranking SLRs are, by the way, the autoloading 825 and the Zebslada 1916. Now, the pattern that quickly emerges here is that all of these weapons have very high magazine counts, meaning that accuracy isn't necessarily the primary objective of these weapons or the primary focus of the player using them, and spamming downrange bullets is a much more viable tactic. So if spamming downrange bullets is working fine for you, then why should you bother trying to put in the time and the effort to learn something like the 835 and the Zebslada 1906? Well, first of all, spamming downrange generally, other than in close quarter scenarios, isn't really that effective. You're going to get out damaged by the LMG class, you're going to get out damaged at close quarter by the assault class anyway, and at long range, you're just going to get sniped by one of these scout players. So you're not really being too effective of a player, both for yourself and your team. More importantly, you're missing out on some of the best weapons in the game. So when it comes to these skill cannons, they offer not only a great deal of flexibility generally unparalleled by most weapon categories and most weapons in Battlefield 1, and we'll kind of cover this on the side more as we go through this video, but they also offer extremely good damage output, extremely low time to kills. For a matter of fact, looking specifically at the autoloading 835, it comes with a TTK, time to kill that is faster than that of the Hellriegel in close quarters. For a matter of fact, it sports a time to kill comparable to the Hellriegel, not only in close quarters, but all the way out to 47 meters. So for clarification here, at 46 meters, you can down a target as quickly as somebody in close quarters at 0 meters, more or less, can down their target with a Hellriegel, assuming perfect accuracy in both scenarios. That's a great amount of damage output across a pretty wide range, 0 to 47 meters. Now when it comes to the other skill cannon in today's video, the Zebslada 1906, it being more of a medium long range skill cannon, this weapon brings time to kills comparable to that of the BAR 1918 for close quarter scenarios, so still very good time to kills there, but it takes this time to kill and can more or less down a target at any range on the map as quickly as something like a BAR 1918 Storm, for example, can do in close quarters. That's some pretty good damage output. If you've used any of these weapons, and given that they're the most popular in their respective classes, I'm assuming you have, you know that that is a pretty good damage output. Those weapons down your targets pretty quickly. Now, as of making this video, of course, the 4-shot kill reduction for most weapons in close quarters hasn't gone out. By the time you watch this video, maybe it has, in which case these comparisons won't quite be accurate anymore, but my point nevertheless stands. The time to kill of these weapons is extremely low, and that is favorable for you in any engagement. Time to kill wins battles in the end if you can place that time to kill accurately on target. Now, having indoctrinated you guys with plenty of propaganda in favor of the autoloading 835 and Zebslada 1906, let's start to get to the meat on the bone. What is important when you're using these weapons? And there really is 2 categories of things that you need to pay attention to. On one side, target selection and playstyle, and the other side, accuracy and trigger discipline. Now, all of these four things are to a certain extent interlinked, but I've nevertheless decided to separate them in the already mentioned ways. When it comes into target selection, there's nothing more basic when it comes to using these weapons than making sure that you're taking one target on at a time. And you most effectively do this by playing a proactive and not reactive playstyle, by playing cover and choosing who you're going to take out, taking them out, going back to your cover, reloading, and then moving on to the next target. This proactive versus reactive playstyle is something that generally is beneficial for pretty much any weapon in the game, but is essential for using these weapons successfully, and really goes counter to what many players may be doing in their everyday Battlefield experience, especially if you love running around as Assault player. This is not criticism, this is simply a matter of fact. Most Assault players on the Battlefield tend to just run in on objectives. That's not necessarily the best thing to do as Assault, but it's certainly the worst thing you can do if you're playing a skill cannon such as the 835 or Zebslada 1906. The simple reason for this is while you do have the time to kill, to take out somebody using, for example, a Cei-Rigotti in close quarters, you don't necessarily have the accuracy no matter how good you are, because your opponent, if aware of your position, is going to engage in the usual AD-AD dancing to make himself a harder target. Well, this is going to make it more difficult for anybody really to hit another player if they're engaging in such AD-AD dancing. It's going to affect the SLRs most prominently because they have not only a lower fire rate, but usually don't have an automatic firing mode, meaning that tracking targets, at least personally for me and for many players I play with, is more difficult. So you want to avoid those situations entirely by being the one that engages the firefight in the first place and taking the target out before they can get a chance to react or start firing back. That way you don't have to deal with these disadvantages that come with an SLR, that come with your opponent dancing back and forth, performing some kind of AD-AD spam, but instead can just enjoy the full benefits of having that quick time to kill. So what this means in summary really is only one target at a time, and sadly, no assault zerging. Now when it comes to the accuracy trigger discipline part of using these weapons successfully, this is especially relevant to the 835. Also relevant to the 1906, more relevant to the 1906 than pretty much any other weapon in the game, other than the autoloading 835, where it's even more relevant. Now this is because the RPM of the 835 is just beautifully high. 359 rounds per minute is just gorgeous to deal with, and especially in those close quarter scenarios, which is such a great time to kill. It's so tempting to just basically spam mouse button 1 or your trigger button on your console and fire through those 5 shots in no time. The problem with that is that often you're not going to actually hit your shots when you trigger through so quickly. At those more medium long range scenarios, you're going to be dealing with too much spread to successfully be able to take out your target, and generally with the autoloading 835, your aim may not be on point with your first shot, and if you only notice that because you're triggering through so quickly by your third or fourth shot, you've not got enough bullets left to shoot down your target successfully, and you may find yourself getting killed mid-reload. So that's most relevant when it comes to trigger discipline. This means slowing down your fire rate from the maximum fire rate available to the SLR. This is a great tip and important for all SLRs. That's why in my weapon reviews I always cover the maximum fire rate at minimum spread, but it's all the more important for a weapon that simply does not have enough spare bullets for you to mess around with to miss multiple shots in a row. So this means that you always have to prioritize hitting a shot versus firing your next one before you know you've hit it. Slow down the fire rate, always go for accuracy over fire rate, and you're going to find yourself being much more successful when using these weapons. It's something that every player of the autoloading 835 or the Zebslada 1906 suffers from, and you'll see me often having to whip out a pistol because I've missed too many shots when firing the weapon. This is because I am no perfect player myself. I am not the ultimate autoloading 835 or Zebslada 1906 skill cannon user. It's over time this will develop and you will become less prone to triggering through, but from time to time your old habit of spamming down range may just slip in once again. Now, having covered why to use these weapons and essentially how to use these weapons, you're thinking, well, how do I get from where I am now to where I need to be, where you've told me where I need to be, what I need to be able to do to successfully use these weapons? It's all good you telling me you need to be also accurate and you need to have the right position and you need to play proactively, not reactive. How do I actually do it? Well, now you could just try and kind of force it through and get into your mindset that you're going to play like this and not like that, and then you'll be successful. But for most players, it's going to take quite a bit of time of practice, and likely the best way to do it is by going through a series of weapons to slowly build your skills up to the point where you need them to successfully use these skill cannons. And as such, in my analysis on how to get there, you've got a beginner stage, an intermediate stage, and a pro stage, with each weapons in these individual stages having a core function, a core lesson to be learned from it when using it before you advance to the next. And the beginner stage are weapons that most of you will already be familiar with, if you play the medic class at least, that is. And that is the Cei-Rigotti and the Mondragon. Sadly, no autoloading 825 Zeb Slaughter 1916 or an M1907 to be found here. Nope, Trigger Discipline starts on day 1. You may not have 16 or 21 shots available to you anymore, only 10, but nevertheless, this should be a relatively easy stage to get through if you're decent with LSLRs. Now, when it comes to the Cei-Rigotti specifically, this weapon is going to be your first time you're going to try and focus on accuracy and mag management. Yes, you have 10 shots available, I am aware of that, but nevertheless, you should try and get down your targets, bullets to kill on target, to 3, 4, 5, 6. If you're still requiring 7 fired shots at a 3-shot kill engagement distance with the Cei-Rigotti, then you're not ready to advance to the intermediate stage yet. You're simply not accurate enough yet, and with a bit more practice, you will get there. And if you're not a player of SLRs, I'd like to mention this at this point in time. Initially, this is going to be painful, but you'll soon get the hang of using something like the Cei-Rigotti on Mondragon and find that these weapons can be quite effective if used in the right hands. Now, when it comes to the Mondragon, while the Cei-Rigotti focused more on the kind of close quarter medium range, an engagement distance you would usually find, for example, the autoloading 835 performing most successfully at, the Mondragon is geared towards more the long range accuracy. And here you're going to be able to focus on leading shots as well as maximizing your accuracy once more. This being, of course, an engagement distance where you'd find the Zeb Slaughter 1906 dominating usually. Now, once you've completed, to many people, this quite easy stage of the process, we move on to the intermediate stage, and sadly this is kind of the biggest jump because there's not really any weapons between something like a Mondragon and Cei-Rigotti and something like a General Louis or even RSC. It's a hefty jump, but there's no other way to do it. Now, when it comes to the General Louis, this is the first time you're going to want to, as player, focus on pacing and target selection. Now, assuming you've got your accuracy down to the point where you can 6-shot kill anybody with the Cei-Rigotti or Mondragon, you'll find no difficulty using the General Louis because its magazine size is 6. And if you don't have that accuracy, then return to the beginner stage, please. That's why when using the General Louis, focus on pacing. This is a weapon with a 300 rounds per minute fire rate. Try not to use those 299 rounds per minute fully when engaging in targets other than those in close quarters. Furthermore, this is where you're going to want to start focusing on target selections. You may have 6 shots available, but that's only really enough in most scenarios to take out 1 target. Theoretically, it's enough to take out 2 targets, but for most people, it's only enough to take out 1 target. So with the General Louis, try to get in the habit of selecting 1 target, taking them out, and then going for the reload behind your cover. This also comes down to good positioning, of course, on any given map. Once you've mastered the General Louis, depending on how good you are with it, you may want to make a sidestep. Also in the intermediate stage, the RSC. Now, some of you will say the RSC is actually a skill cannon on its own. It's just as difficult, if not more difficult to use than the autoloading 835 and Zeb Slaughter 1906. And in certain sense, that is true. In other senses, it is not. The reason why you want to use the RSC is to further improve your accuracy and further build on proactive playstyle. That's where the RSC can really help, because if you don't manage to do that with the RSC, you're dead. There's no way you're successful whatsoever. Now, the RSC is more forgiving in the pacing department because its fire rate is so slow, there's not really any pacing needed to be done there. And it's more forgiving in the magazine count. You've got enough bullets to technically kill 3 targets, but it's not forgiving on the accuracy department because, yes, you may have enough bullets to kill 3 targets, but if you miss 1 shot, your target knows you're there. And if you don't hit that next shot, you're a dead man one way or another. The proactive playstyle just underlines this. You have to be the one engaging. You cannot play the RSC in a reactive fashion. You're simply going to get overrun. The same applies for the later skill cannons like the autoloading 835 and Zeb Slaughter 1906, but to a certain extent applies even more to the RSC, meaning that once you've mastered the RSC, moving on to the skill cannons should be a relatively easy job. And so, having mastered then the intermediate stage, you move on to the pro stage, where you will find, as predicted, the autoloading 835 and 1906. But before you enjoy and rejoice having completed this challenge and now being a perfectly competent medic player capable of using the best weapons that the medic class has to offer, hold on there for just one moment. If you're having a little bit of trouble, for example with trigger discipline and the proactive playstyle, because you either skipped the RSC or just didn't quite manage the RSC, then don't play the autoloading 835 just yet. Go for the Zeb Slaughter. That's because with trigger discipline, the autoloading 835 is more difficult to control yourself. You've got a higher fire rate. It's so tempting to just basically trigger through, and you want to do that in close quarters. And the same goes for the proactive playstyle. Because of your closer proximity to the enemy with the autoloading 835, you're more likely to get killed if you screw up on your trigger discipline, or you screw up on your proactive playstyle and get surprised by an assault player. That is less likely to happen with these Zebs Slaughter 1906 because you're simply further away from the action. As such, you have time to reload and re-engage, and more time to think about why you didn't down that target who was standing perfectly in the open and was a relatively easy kill. Vice versa, if you're having trouble with bare accuracy and can't stop yourself from running into close quarter scenarios, go for the autoloading 835 first. That's because in an accuracy department, the further away from your target you are, the more difficult it is to actually kill your target. The autoloading 835's ideal engagement distance is under 47 meters, whereas the Zebs Slaughter 1906's is, at least when comparing it to the autoloading 835, above 47 meters. As such, accuracy, shooting accurately, is going to be easier at medium range with the autoloading 835 than it will be with the 1906 at long range. Furthermore, of course, the 835 is more forgiving in the sense that if you miss one shot, you can more quickly fire your next shot. In the end, however, if you don't achieve 60% accuracy, you won't have enough bullets, of course, to down that target. And lastly, of course, when it comes to that close quarter Zerg, you can't stop yourself. The autoloading 835 is the better weapon for close quarters, and as such, maybe you'll get killed less frequently when using it in close quarters compared to when using the 1906. Now, I'd love to hear your opinion on the 1906, the autoloading 835, this video, as well as the kind of breakdown of the different stages I've made to slowly but surely get your skills up to the stage where you can successfully use these weapons. If you have any experiences, you are an experienced user of these weapons, would like to leave any tips down below in the comments, those would be appreciated, as well as of course your usual video suggestions, which you can hit me up with down below in the comments or on Twitter. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and with all that being said, I'd like to thank you very much for watching and hope to see you in the next Battlefield 1 video.